Hi guys, my name is Tom and I'm the Tech Chap. This is my comparison video between the Apple iPhone 6 and the 6 Plus. I've made separate in-depth reviews of each device that you can find on my channel, but for now we'll just be looking at the differences between these two, putting these head to head. Obviously there's a big screen size difference, but if you're on the fence about which device you'd want, maybe you're concerned that the 6 Plus will just be too big, we'll be looking at in detail all the differences between these two devices, and hopefully by the end of it you'll have a better idea of, if you are in the market for a new phone, which one you prefer. So let's get to it. So except for the difference in size, the design is pretty much identical, although the iPhone 6 is 0.2 millimeters thinner than the 6 Plus, but that's not really a big deal. So that's great, the design is the same, but one point I made when reviewing the phones is just how slippery the aluminium body is. This is less of a problem on the 6, as you can get a solid grip with one hand. On the 6 Plus, however, I'm constantly thinking about my grip, how secure it is, and trying not to drop it. It feels like one of the most fragile phones I've ever used, and you really want to use two hands to support it. So the slight issue, perhaps, of the slipperiness, thanks to the aluminium build of the 6, is exacerbated with the size here. However, as I said in my reviews, you can simply put a case on it, which has the added benefit of covering the protruding camera lens, so it's less likely to be scratched. Obviously this adds further weight to the already heavy 6 Plus at 172 grams, but I still highly recommend doing that. So basically it comes down to one question: do you mind, or actually will you embrace the fact that the 6 Plus pretty much requires a two-handed operation? To ensure solid grip and to reach all parts of the display, two hands are required. As if you try and hold it in one, which you can do, it doesn't feel particularly safe, and you really are going to have to hold it very tightly. And as you can see, that my thumb doesn't really reach that far onto the screen. One tip would be to arrange your icons so that the most useful apps are towards the bottom, so then you can reach the bottom 3, bottom 4 rows. There's also a zoom option, but that gets rid of the split view and horizontal view, so that's not particularly useful. So the main tip here would be just bring the important apps that you use most regularly down to the bottom. So in terms of ergonomics, it's quite simple: one-handed use versus two-handed use, and it's up to you which you prefer and whether you mind it. But don't be put off, you do get used to using a phone with two hands, and there are added benefits to it. But saying that, as soon as you go back to a smaller phone like the 6, you do actually appreciate just how portable it is. The ease of use becomes a feature almost. So of course it's a personal preference. People won't mind two-handed use on a large phone because they've opted for a large phone. The only time it will be a consideration is for people who are on the fence between the two. And in terms of ergonomics, if you are on the fence, go to the shop, hold both for a few minutes and see what you think. But in my opinion, if you're unsure, err on the side of caution and stick with the 6. It's definitely more comfortable, and it's probably something you're a bit more used to. So let's move on from the design and talk about the display. The reason the iPhone 6 is so much bigger is because it's housing this huge, beautiful 5.5 inch full HD display. That's up from the 4.7 inches of the 6. The biggest difference here, aside from the size, is the fact that the 6 Plus features a full HD, so that's 1080p display, whereas the 6 makes do with a slightly below average for 2015 and slightly odd 1334 by 750 resolution. So what? Well, it means that the 6 Plus has 401 pixels per inch versus the 326 of the 6. I hate the PPI metric as much as the next guy, but it does reflect the fact that the 6 Plus does have a slightly sharper display. Text and images are a touch crisper, and it's more difficult to make out individual pixels. So on paper, in terms of display, the 6 is better, but in reality you won't really notice the difference between them unless you hold it right up to your eye. But for the majority of users, the 6 Plus will be just fine at this resolution, and the difference will be negligible. But if you are eagle-eyed and care about these things, it is a legitimate reason to opt for the 6 Plus, particularly if you watch 1080p TV or movies, such as Netflix or YouTube, and also you're viewing the video you take on the camera in its native 1080p resolution. So again, it will depend on the individual, but for most people, the PPI difference won't really be an issue, and so the 6 is probably plenty good enough. So in terms of performance, well, the 6 and the 6 Plus both use the same A8 processor. They're both clocked at 1.4 GHz and they both use 1 GB of RAM. So why do I mention performance? Well, although they feature the same hardware, the fact that the iPhone 6 actually has a lower resolution means it's a bit faster. The 6 only has to push about 1 million pixels thanks to the 1334 by 750 res. The 6 Plus has to push 2.7 million pixels with its 1080p display. So there is a slight caveat with the sharper display on the 6 Plus, but to be fair, this will only really come across in benchmarks. And to demonstrate this, if I ran the Antutu benchmark on both phones. So to save time, I have already run the tests of the Antutu benchmark and have screenshotted the results. And as you can see, and perhaps slightly contrary to what I expected, the 6 is faster. And you can see here, that's just quite simply a high number. But that really is what it is. It's just a high number. And although in benchmarks you'll see the 6 is faster, it is purely because it's just not rendering or pushing as many pixels as the 6 Plus is. So, like I said with the display, it's not going to be a big deal for most people. This is actually even less of a big deal. So the 6 is a bit faster. It's not something most people would expect, but having said all that, it's not even really worth considering. The difference in real-world applications, it will be basically noticeable. To demonstrate, let me just open a couple of the apps to show you that they both load pretty much, well, they both load almost exactly the same speed. And it's a little bit hard to use two phones at once, but you can see everything is pretty much identical, as it should be. So if you want the absolute fastest and care about how your phone ranks in benchmarks, then the 6 is simply the winner. But it will make next to no difference in real life. So for the 99% of you, the performance is the same for both. Now moving on from that, let's have a look at the battery life. And from my testing, this is where the 6 Plus really comes into its own and offers a genuine advantage over the 6. It boils down to the fact that I can get just over a day, so roughly 30 hours of moderate typical use from the 6, but I can get a solid 2 days, around 45 hours from the 6 Plus, and that's quite a difference. So far, my comparison has had me leaning towards the 6 as the clear winner, but the battery life really does sway me back. If you don't like carrying a charger or power pack with you and battery performance is important, which it is for most people, it's definitely worth considering the 6 Plus on this basis alone. I would estimate that overall it has around 35 to 40% greater battery performance, and that is pretty significant. And finally, the camera. Everyone wants a good camera on their smartphone, and the difference between these two devices is simply that the iPhone 6 Plus has optical image stabilization on the rear camera, also known as OIS. It does what it says on the tin, really, pretty much. It just stabilizes the images you take in order to preserve more detail and reduce the potential for blurring. Does it make a difference in real life? Well, you be the judge. I've taken a variety of still images and videos, and both with the same setting, which is Auto HDR enabled and both at 60 FPS recording. So let's see if there is any perceptible difference between them. So let me jump into the camera app and go into the gallery, and I'll show you time lapses, I'll show you slow motion, I'll show you stills and video, just to see if you can see any appreciable difference. So I've taken pretty much identical pictures here. I held them both at the same position and took it at the exact same time, so there should be almost no difference between each image, so we can see effectively the difference between the cameras and whether OIS, which is the only difference between them, has any impact. So let's start on this clock face, and again, they both look pretty similar. Now, the issue is when you're viewing them on the phone is you're going to perhaps think that the iPhone 6 Plus takes a slightly better picture because it has a sharper screen, it's displaying a bit more detail, and it just looks a bit nicer because it's a bigger size. But since I'm overlaying the images to you, you'll see them equally. You won't see one is better than the other because of the resolution. They'll be identical. So I've evened the playing field for you here, but actually viewing them on the phone, you will think that the 6 Plus is a bit better, and that's a result of the slightly sharper display. So both cameras look great, and if I scroll through a few more pictures, you'll see that they take pretty much identical shots. Now, I spent some time looking at these images a bit more closely myself to analyze them earlier, and unfortunately I can't see really any difference in the 6 Plus with the OIS. So although the first few pictures haven't really presented much difference, where the OIS does become a significant advantage is in lower light photos. This picture of the road, you can see that the 6 Plus is, the building on the 6 Plus photo is a fair bit brighter and has captured a significant amount more detail than the 6. And the reason for this is that the OIS allows the camera or the sensor to stay open a bit longer, essentially, because it's not quite as susceptible to the shake that you would normally get on a phone without it. So because it allows more light in, you're seeing, especially in low light situations, more detail and brighter subjects. So this could be fairly important, especially if you take lots of photos in the nighttime or you take out in the evening with friends. You're going to get a slightly better picture on the iPhone 6 Plus. But it is only slightly. I mean, it's noticeable. You can see the difference, but it's only slightly better. And in good light, in daylight, there's almost no perceptible difference between them. Now, one of the issues of videoing while you're walking is that you get quite a lot of movement from when your foot hits the ground and when you're moving about. So I took an identical video on each, and I was just walking through a field. Obviously, the 6 Plus has OIS, so therefore should perhaps be a bit more stable than the 6, but I'll play both and let you be the judge. Now you can see that this is actually filmed at 60 FPS, so that's why it's a bit smoother. They both take fantastic video, and I'm trying to see if there is much of a difference. And I'm getting the impression that the OIS on the 6 Plus is actually exaggerating my steps a little bit. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but either way, you could probably argue it each way. So I think from that camera test, we can basically sum up that the OIS does make a difference, but that's almost exclusively only in low light situations. But in those situations, it does make a noticeable improvement. So it's not a significant improvement than the battery life was, but it is something that it's a shame we're not seeing on the 6. It doesn't really, both cameras protrude, but everything else is identical. So it's a bit odd that we're not seeing it on the 6, and it's clearly just an extra reason, I suppose, to buy the 6 Plus and spend that extra money. So if a good camera is important to you, they're both great. If you want the best of the best iPhone camera, you're going to have to opt for the 6 Plus. So in conclusion, they're both great phones. I really enjoy using and reviewing both of them. I think for the vast majority of people, you're going to still want to opt for the iPhone 6, despite the significantly better battery on the 6 Plus. Optical image stabilization does improve low light photos, I found, and it is a little bit nicer to have a full HD display. But for most people, for most consumers, it's just going to be a bit too big, and the portability, ease of use, and the fact that you can use it one-handed of the iPhone 6 is actually a selling point for me, and actually a feature having reviewed this. So if you're a power user, if you really love watching full HD content all the time, and battery is a big issue for you, then maybe you can opt for the 6 Plus. But you are paying a premium for it, of course. You are paying more. But for most people, as much as I like the 6 Plus and as much as it is like a really nice, almost tablet phone, I think for a phone, and these are smartphones, I think the majority of people should stick with the iPhone 6. But for both devices, I would opt for the 64GB model if you can afford it. I really would. 16GB only give you about 12 gigs free. So you can't go wrong with either. They're both fantastic phones. This I would describe is a bit of a phablet and will be compared against the Note 4. This is a standard sort of size smartphone. So it depends what you're in the market for. It's completely personal choice. I really like both. They both have merits, and it is a shame that we can't get the better battery or optical image stabilization on the 6. That does sort of take away a little bit of the premium components overall. But they're both great devices, and I hope this video has helped you, if you are in the market for a new phone, to decide between them, or just if you're interested in what the differences are. It's made it a little bit clearer for you. So thank you very much for watching. I've been the Tech Chap, and this has been my comparison of the 6 and 6 Plus. Please like and subscribe. Your subscriptions make all the difference. It allows me to continue buying these expensive pieces of kit and coming to show you and comparing them. So please subscribe, and for more, check out thetechchap.com. But there's nothing else to say other than cheers for watching, guys. See you again soon.